weeks. And yeah, my son, he had flu 2 weeks ago and he's a little bit flu-y again tonight, so had to hold up and take care of him a little bit, but hopefully that's all good. So yes, a bit of a later start than usual. Apologies for that. Sergeant Bilko, yes indeed, live. Sorry for the 20-minute delayed start, but very glad that you could make it. Very glad to see so many people there in the comments. I see Steve from Berkeley. In fact, let's not make it top chat, let's make it live chat. I don't know what the difference is or why it discriminates when I do that. But yes indeed, I see. And let me close down some unnecessary windows. Definitely see there Steve from Berkeley, Sergeant Bilko, Andrea Mulboy, who I think has gone away to bed early. Understandable, Australia. It's already 1 a.m. over there, but hope all is well with you. Sergeant Bilko, Tech Art 2, Mr. Cordy Chap, Tokyo 503, Steve from Berkeley, I already said, Quint Rankhead, good to see you, and welcome. So, for all of those reasons, if it's short, I won't extend the show tonight. I'll probably have to get some sleep and work from home tomorrow by the looks of things, but still lots of things to talk about. First thing is kind of some cool news. I think I mentioned last year, I've mentioned a few times on the show, the non-native creative podcast and video channel that's run by Arisha in Tokyo. And I mentioned that we had talked, and yes, I wasn't sure if she was going to use the interview she did with me. I wasn't sure I was actually that interesting, but I found out tonight that the video looks like it's going to go up in the next couple of days. And I got a sneak peek at it tonight, and it was actually, it was a while ago now. So I'd kind of forgotten the content of it, but I looked at it and it was actually pretty, I thought it was kind of good. So if you like this, you like that, you should be. And frankly, the other videos in the series that she's done, the other interviews with other different sort of non-Japanese creators who live in Japan, and different sorts, like restaurant sort of designers and manga translators and all different kinds of people who do creative things. It's a really great series. I'm barely worthy to be included among it, but yes, my own episode is coming up, so hey, if you like this, you like that, so go and watch and check out the other episodes and support that. It's still, this channel's still getting off the ground, but a lot of work is going into the vids, I know, so that's a cool thing that's coming up. Remember, non-native creative. I'll type it so that you can all remember to go see it. Hey, Andrea Mulboy, I'm glad to see that you are still up. A few people in Australia now confirmed to have coronavirus. Indeed, and same in Japan, a few people over here. It was funny actually, because I was just in, I don't know where in Melbourne I saw it was in Melbourne, but I was staying in Box Hill when I was there, and I'm guessing it might be around there, just how, having not been there in 25 years, it's definitely. I was staying in the Chen Hotel. I don't know if you know where that is, the shopping centre. I guess if you know Melbourne, you'll probably know, but I'm pretty sure that would probably be trouble central if the virus is there. Non-native creative, I just typed it there. That is the channel. Remember, as always, if you want to say hello to me or ask me a question or direct a comment towards me, at Mark Hiko Simon, you can highlight a comment to me. Also, Andrea Mulboy, yes indeed. Have fun with the tennis, of course, and I know it's hot and it's actually hard work, but it's really cool that you get to do that, so please enjoy that. Oh no, it really wasn't Box Hill. Well, I'm glad we got there before all the drama started. Wow, that is crazy. Odie Jr., good to see you. And Olivia D, also good to see you. Yasa, I see Yasa is here, good to see you. Wow, we've got heaps of people here, which I'm very appreciative of. And yes indeed. Let's get into the topics that we have. I just mentioned the non-native creative thing, so look out for that. Go subscribe to that. I will, of course, I will certainly be retweeting it when it goes up on, it'll be up on YouTube and on podcast as well. So, it hasn't been too bad in terms of heat, but crazy weather. Yes, indeed, Andrew. I saw that there were floods and hailstorms after when I was there. There was a 45-degree day when I was there in Melbourne. And of course all the smoke and whatnot has probably just been a bit too much. Mr. Cordy Chad, maybe it was me, maybe it was, but yeah, it probably wasn't. So let's get into the topics. The first topic, the news stories that people really care about. Apparently there's a BuzzFeed article today quoting people on Twitter who love Saizeriya. And yes indeed, and these are all true things. Being a craft beer fan was fun, but it's also a colossal money sink in Japan. Why would you pay 1,000 yen for a single drink? It's insane. I could have an entire meal at Saizeriya for that, and that is true. Saizeriya, you can actually get decent like courses and combine them, like 300 or 400 yen each, and they're actually pretty good. It is Japanese BuzzFeed. Taisi Rucker says, I'm craving Saizeriya, the best Italian Japanese restaurant ever. I felt compelled after seeing this to point out that, you know, someone should explain that sometimes in English, you know, praise can be sarcastic, but it's good. Saizeriya is good. I mean, there are different family chains with different varying degrees of reputation. That air conditioning's making a lot of noise. I'm gonna turn that off. It's of course because it is freezing. It's supposed to possibly even snow. It's certainly going to snow tomorrow. It's a question whether it will settle on the ground or not. It probably won't do that. But yeah, it's going to be. Oh, good night, Andrea. Have a good night there, and take good care. But yes, it's freezing cold at the moment. It's certainly cold enough to snow. The thing about Tokyo is that it gets cold enough to snow, but because it's kind of sheltered by mountains, the snow never actually makes it to us in terms of precipitation. It's always dry, which I guess is nice, but we just got all the right conditions tomorrow that there might be some snow even in central Tokyo tomorrow, so that should be interesting. I went to Saizeriya myself, by the way. My son loves Saizeriya. So yeah, we were hanging out, and I try to convince him to go to anywhere other than Saizeriya, but truth is, I don't mind it. I told the story why I like Saizeriya actually on Twitter today. For those of you who saw it, I guess you see it better. The story is that in my very first job in Japan in 1999, I worked at an IT company, and the first project that I was assigned to was a silicon wafer factory in Umesato, which is one stop from Noda Station, or Noda City in Chiba, Chibaraki, basically, northern Chiba, sort of closest to Saitama and Ibaraki. And I was there for 2 years, and this train station which I had to use to commute to work, it really was the middle of nowhere. It was about a 20-minute walk from the train station to the factory, through rice fields and whatnot. There was almost nothing around the station, and the only things that were on the way were two things. There was a Lawson, about 5 minutes walk along, and then another 5 minutes walk along on the corner of a sort of Rokugo. There was a big Saizeriya restaurant, family restaurant, as you get peppered all over the place that people typically go to in their cars in those parts. And then another 5 or 10 minutes walk, and you've got the factory, which I was working at. And at the factory, the menu had 3 items. This being Noda. Noda, by the way, is famous for, it's the home of Kikkoman, you know, the soy sauce company. So if you have soy sauce, and you know what soy sauce comes from, of course, it comes from soya beans, and in Kita Kanto, if you're into soya beans, of course, the other output is natto, and everybody eats natto like crazy up there, and I had to learn how to eat it. I never really became a fan of it, but I developed a tolerance for it. But whenever I say that I worked in Noda for the first couple of years, everyone thinks I worked at Kikkoman, and I had to explain, no, I worked at the other company that's in Noda, which is a silicon wafer factory. And yes, so the food at the silicon wafer factory, we were the most of the factory workers, of course, they had shifts from like 8 until, what was it? It basically worked out they had 8-hour days, so I guess they worked 9 to 5 or whatever it was, and there's a 12 to 1 lunch break, which is because it's a factory, everything is dictated like a school by school bells and chimes. However, in the IT project room that we were in, we were told to be there at 7:30 in the morning, and we'd work as late as we could. The last train was about 11:30, which meant that we had to leave a little bit after 11 to be able to catch the final train. And most days we were catching the final train, so I was catching the 11:30 train and getting home around midnight. The problem being that, yes, so at the cafeteria there were 3 types of meals. There was the set menu A, which was 400 yen, and the set menu B, which was 350 yen, and they were just basically rice and some veggies and some miso soup and something. But they always had a lot of natto attached with them because we were in Noda. Both the sets had natto, and I wasn't a big fan, and they weren't very good. But the curry was super cheap. For 220 yen, you could not only get a curry, but you could get a huge pork cutlet with it. So it was actually pretty good value. And when you're hungry, you've been working this at 7:30 in the morning. I was actually into getting the curry for lunch. It was delicious. The problem was every time I had it, it would give me diarrhea. And the other problem being that the factory was basically, we weren't allowed out. There was nothing else to eat other than between that 12 and 1. So because people were struggling with the cafeteria food, what my project team, because we weren't employees of the factory, we were an external IT company, so we would leave at lunchtime and go over to Saizeriya, and we would love having Saizeriya, a couple of times a week. However, the client told us, hey, you guys leaving the factory when the factory workers are not allowed to leave the factory, that's not cool. New rule, you guys have to eat in the factory and stay in the factory while you're working there. And they thought this would be a nice way to sort of incentivize us to work faster and run up less hours as well. So it meant that we were only able to go to Saizeriya at night if we stopped early, work early, which, we do like once a month or once every couple of weeks. We might have an early night, go out there at 9 p.m. and have something at Saizeriya. But other than that, it basically meant that we were stuck all day in a factory where there's no food after 1 p.m., working until 11 p.m. from 7:30 a.m. And the only thing I could eat was curry, which would give me that. So I learned to go to Lawson and get some snacks, which I try to draw out through the day. But yes, through the 2 years that I was at that project site, I lost my hair and 22 kilograms. But when I was really skinny, I was basically, my target weight's like 74. I was about 65. I was almost at the very bottom permitted weight that I am for Japanese, even by Japanese health checkup standards. I'm like, right now I'm about 86. I'm trying to get back down to 84. I'm over the red line right now. Had too much of a good trip to Australia for Christmas. But it was, the thing was, the only escape that I had out there was Saizeriya. And at that Saizeriya, they used to actually have, the menus, I liked it better back then. They used to have pink lemonade on the unlimited drink menu that you could go and get from the drink bar. They'd have like this sort of salad, which would have, let me put that close. They would have the salad, which would have like yakiniku in it, which was pretty delicious. So that was good. And yes, I used to love going to Saizeriya. It's affordable, and although I was kind of making fun of how people were, talking about how much they love Saizeriya, it's excellent value and it's pretty good food. And for me, it was like the only escape for a long time. So for me, I've actually got a real soft spot for Saizeriya. When my son says he wants to go to Saizeriya, I'm like, yeah, let's go, dude. So, yes, that is indeed. I never got back the hair. I definitely got back the weight. Indeed, if only I could put on hair like I could put on weight. Not that I obviously care about it, but thank you for pointing it out. Now, what can you do? Do people brown bag in Japan? They don't brown bag. They do bring bentos if they have people nice enough to make them bentos. I suppose if you call it brown bag, I would buy something at a convenience store and I'd stick it in my bag and I'd kind of try to sneak. We weren't allowed to eat in the project room. We also people started smoking, and they'd go to the smoking room and go there for 10 or 15 minutes, and they were getting these breaks through the day. And so I started going to the tea room and just grabbing tea just for the mental break, just so I could take a break. And I remember my boss one day told me, hey, no slacking off in the tea room, taking breaks. And I was like, well, everybody takes breaks. It's just, they do it to smoke. Why can't I take a break? And they're like, they're smokers. They need to take breaks. So yes, there was a lot of BS. That was the first job. It was a lot of hazing basically, but it was a good way to get acclimatized to being here. So that was a thing that happened. Yes, lots of discussion about Saizeriya, and it is actually pretty good. It's dirt cheap, and the food is pretty decent. On Saturday I went there. I had a steak, ribeye steak, the most expensive item on the menu, 999 yen, like $7, and a little mini baguette of garlic toast and some spinach and bacon. It was good. And the drink bar, I got some orange squash. It was good. So what can I say? Beat up your boss. Well, yeah, it came close to that at times, Mr. Kordychev, but what can you do? The Japanese government, keen with the Olympics coming up to make sure that foreigners follow Japanese behaviors, have started putting out humid videos on telling gaijins how to behave, things like, for example, how to stand on escalators and how to, particularly areas which are having stress from over-tourism. Things that we all need to know, like how to flush toilets, how to hold our backpacks in front of our bodies and whatnot, but all that sort of stuff. Hey Tawaiwai, good to see you, and new rats indeed. So yes, all the news about the coronavirus, by the way, the 4th case was discovered in Japan today. I believe all the cases have actually involved Chinese tourists from Wuhan, specifically from Hubei province, or specifically from the city. whenever I read the word Wuhan in the news, I have a problem that I think of this Busta Rhymes track. I know the drum and bass version, but yes, apparently a lot of other people think of Wu-Tang Clan ain't nothing to fuck with, and they substitute obviously Wu-Tang for Wuhan. Kind of makes sense as well, but for me, I think the probably Busta Rhymes shouting Wuha is probably more similar. Not a good thing, of course, but that is I'm kind of cursed with that. I guess now if you listen to that track, you'll probably have that issue too. But yes, in terms of what's happening with that, for a start, crazy what's happening in China. I mean, just the fact that China has how many cities, like 20, 30 cities that have more than like 10 million people. Japan has one. Yokohama, the number 2 city, is like 3 million, actually has like 4 million people. Osaka has 3 million people. But yes, the fact that you have right now a situation with 30 million people in multiple different cities in lockdown in China, it is remarkable and scary what China can do there again. Thank heavens that they can. I mean, of course, China doing a lot of stuff which they should be being more called out upon in Western China and whatnot, but yes, it looks like they are trying to do the right thing and control people leaving. In fact, as of tomorrow, group tours from China are going to be banned. I don't know why group tours and not individual tours are being banned. But this is Chinese New Year. It's a time when Japan typically gets flooded. Apparently, Japan is the number 1 most popular tourist destination for Chinese tourists right now. And I saw a news article saying that hotels in Asakusa and so on were worried about the loss of revenue from Chinese tours cancelling. But when the Chinese tours are cancelling because they're bringing a virus, well, there's a risk of that. Honestly, the last thing to be cruel and cold, the last thing we care about is the profitability of those restaurants, of those hotels. So yes, indeed, it is a little bit scary. Again, how many times have there been these like SARS apparently came into humans through...
I'm not sure about that.
Jeez, that scared me. Through through some was it bats giving the SARS virus to civets and someone eating a civet. AIDS came from monkeys. In this case, apparently it came from snakes. And they think that they've traced a specific market, which apparently they also even sell koalas at. That was actually Alexa. Which now if I say that it will listen again, I should put it on mute. Anyway, so oh dear. So yes, please don't eat. I mean, what's weird, of course, there is a probably politically incorrect saying in Japan that of course Chinese have a very broad palate for things that they will eat, even compared to like Japanese or Western standards. Japanese people eat horse meat, for example. They eat whale meat, foods that we consider exotic and weird, but they're fairly sort of standardized, at least how they bring it in. But in China, they'll eat pretty much anything, and that's what they're known for. The joke is that they'll eat anything with four legs except the table itself. But yes, again, turtles and whatnot. And there's a lot of foods in Japan, by the way, which you can get globally, which I was snobbish about, like sea urchin, by the way, uni, which I love. It's become one of my favorite foods, and I'm glad I came to Japan and ate it here. But and actually, what I remember as a kid in Singapore, people eating snakes. So snake meat is not that weird in Southeast Asia, but whatever the case is, apparently someone was having the equivalent of exotic, like you can eat peacocks and koalas at this particular market. So people being, effectively bushmeat, and this is how we come into contact with these new viruses, and not good. So I wish they hadn't done that, but yes, it sounds like China's in a tough situation. So really, amazing. I saw the number the other day that China's now up to a population of 1.4 billion people. So it's just an incredibly huge country, and it does sound like they're having real problems controlling it. And you can be sure that with the Chinese New Year, the Lunar New Year, that's occurring this weekend, not just issues with travel abroad, of course, people worry in Japan, But domestically in China as well, a lot of people moving around, so big challenge to control that, but let's all hope that they do that. Of course, it's already come to other places. It's not clear how contagious it is. But yes, indeed, the SARS virus a few years ago gave us a real scare. It's not clear that this is as contagious as this, and in fact, Japanese authorities, one of the third person who was discovered, they apparently found that this person was traveling with other people who were not positive, and they told this person, they didn't even put them in a hospital. They're monitoring the person in their hotel room and saying, don't leave the hotel room. Would be really curious to know the name of the hotel. Obviously, that would be the end of their business if that came up. But in a way, I'm kind of glad. I mean, this is a problem as well when you have a contagious device. You don't want people, too many people bringing this into a hospital. But yeah, pretty pretty scary stuff. In spite of Busta Rhymes them, and we'll keep following it. Japan is, and really because Japan just has so much exchange with China, at least on a people level, and with the New Year vacation. We'll have to see. It is, of course, also flu season anyway. Make sure you've got your shots for that. Totally unrelated, of course. This is a respiratory illness, the coronavirus, but it looks like my son may be getting flu for the second time, so that's a thing that happens. And yes, indeed, the J-Vlog mentioning indeed you can get crocodile or gator in Japan, on imported, of course, in Australia as well. If you look for it, you can get crocodile meat and indeed kangaroo meat. I've tried both and not particularly a fan, but they're edible and fine. I think I mentioned this the other week that Toshiba there was a Toshiba subsidiary that had a revenue of $400 million, and it turned out that $200 million of it came from fake transactions, which I speculated were circular transactions. It turns out now the total number of fake transactions were 360 million out of 400. So this company's revenue was almost entirely faked. And they did it like I guessed they had, through circular transactions, which is like I said, where you get a phone and you sell it to somebody for $50, and then they all sell it to the next person before you register the inventory for $51, and then they sell it to the next person for $52. But the problem is when you have fixed margins that you have to add like 10%, the problem is that you get this exponential rising percent, and this can happen. Classic cases with printers and office equipment, and I believe this was something like that. It was with IT equipment. And again, as happens, it's not done by the leadership, it's actually done by the salespeople. And in this particular case, it looks like there were salespeople between Toshiba, Net1, Nippon Steel, NS Solutions. They call it round tripping here: Fuji Electric, Fuji IT Solutions, Mizuho, Toshiba Leasing, and multiple unlisted tech companies that are not publicly listed companies. And they were just passing around, what were they, telecommunications routers, I believe. And they would just keep adding margin until it ended up where these things were never being shipped. They were imaginary things. And on the books, the numbers were starting to get ridiculous, and some of these entities were showing, enormous profits and revenue without actually shipping anything. And auditors caught this. But it's one of these things that once you start it, you can't stop it. It's kind of like a pyramid scheme. And it screwed up the revenues of all of these companies. It's fraudulent. Some people would point out. It will be interesting if anyone goes to jail for this. It does happen sometimes, but you compare it to the Gon case, of course. This sort of stuff happens without people getting arrested all the time. And Gon, misreporting his post-retirement income and getting jailed for like 1.5 years. This is clearly worse. These are publicly listed companies. I'm a fan of Toshiba, by the way. I like the people. I do like the company. I've worked with them. It makes me sad that this happens. And by the way, all of the Japanese IT companies have had circular transaction issues, and because it's not, it's just something that salespeople tend to do, particularly at the subsidiary level. So we'll see what happens, but that is an interesting thing that happened. And yes, a very Japanese thing that you'll get a bunch of salespeople from different companies willing to cooperate like this. And not to boost the company, just to do each other a bit of a favor, a slap on the back. So that's the thing. Japan has dropped, although it seems a bit weird to say that there's even this thing, best country ranking. What the hell is that? Do not want that. Let's go back in Sora News. I must have clicked on something by accident. But here we go, the annual US News, which doesn't sound like a credible news service, but there we go. Apparently, Canada was number one. Switzerland was number one, and Canada has surpassed Japan as top country. This survey is okay. So this is basically a survey of 36 countries by University of Pennsylvania, Walton. So fairly credible. But apparently, Japan, among the parameters that they were scoring, Japan didn't score well in risk taking, which I guess Japanese would consider a good thing. But where is the ranking? I think the ranking is up here somewhere. In fact, they don't offer a list, but I would like to see where New Zealand and Australia are on this anyway. Maybe it's this link. Let's check this out. No, these are within Japan. Okay, so they don't link outside. In fact, they must. I won't go to the external site, but there we go. Anyway, so Japan has dropped down that ranking list. Apparently, so there's been some surveys on tourists coming to Japan. Apparently, the number one, although Chinese are far and away now the biggest source of tourists to Japan, the biggest per capita spenders in Japan are in fact Australians, which is interesting. That is actually interesting. There was kind of this thing about bakugai, explosive shopping by Chinese, and apparently what was happening was when Chinese had friends who were going on a trip to Japan, their friends would all loan them money to go and buy things like rice cookers and appliances and diapers and baby milk and things that people consider Japan either has better quality of or are safer, they don't trust. For example, quite often the baby milk and stuff in China, there have been some scandals there. So yes, people were kind of clearing out the shopping shelves and were going shopping crazy, but the Chinese government's kind of regulated that more lately. And it looks like when Aussies travel, they're more willing to go and spend on expensive hotels and travel and whatnot, and they're ending up spending more. But within that, apparently Shinjuku takes the crown for the top spending spot for tourists. Trying to think what that might be. Of course, you've got expensive hotels to stay at, so that's just by default. You've got the Hyatt and whatnot there. I mean, Shinjuku is the biggest train station in the world, or the busiest train station in the world anyway. The east exit is really where all the restaurants and going out, that's what that photo is of. It's also got the red light district, although I think that wouldn't be an easy place for tourists to go and spend a lot of money. It's a bit tricky navigating around there, but yeah, there you go. Shinjuku, by the way, Bob Berlick's boy is, Ikebukuro is the Chinatown of Tokyo. Of course, Yokohama is a huge established chukagai from more than 100 years ago, but now most Chinese coming and setting up in Tokyo actually are in Ikebukuro. Shinjuku is probably more famous for the Koreatown in Shiokubo, which is on the far side of the East Station. Of course, you have Chinese, and the other thing now is that Shiokubo is becoming known as much for Vietnamese, which is kind of amazing. When I first came to Japan, there were no Vietnamese. I mean, they didn't even stand out as a group that you'd notice, and now they're almost outnumbering Koreans in places like Shiokubo, which I found kind of mind-blowing. I love Korean food, but I love Vietnamese food, so it definitely has upsides. But there you go. Bill Billet's boy, spend your breaks there. Only here Chinese, no Japanese. Well, in Shinjuku, I've got not to say that there aren't, of course, probably plenty of Chinese there, but you're more likely to hear Vietnamese or Korean than Chinese in Shinjuku anyway, at least as you get closer to Shiokubo. Maybe depends on where you are. Certainly, if you see tourists, no question that the tourists are more likely to be Chinese. But Ikebukuro is the Chinatown, is the genuine Chinatown with the largest Chinese resident population in Tokyo anyway. Well, maybe that's the difference. Maybe tourists go to Shinjuku, but residents who are living and working in Japan from China are all established in Ikebukuro lately, so there you go. Mr. Cordychek prefers Thai and Malaysian food. You know what, they're all very different. I'm actually a big fan of Malaysian food, which is really hard to get in Japan. But Thai food you can get everywhere, and it is wonderful. But yeah, Vietnamese food, like good Vietnamese food, the way that they use their the herbs and stuff like that, to me is like great. And I'm a big banh mi fan. I mean, the way that they use bread and the French influence, I think, is obviously very, very positive. So that is the thing. So yes, Japan is now up to its fourth case. This was the second one, but yes, they're predominantly tourists, Chinese tourists visiting from mainland China. A little bit scary as well that apparently the people understand that to get through the right now, the main way that people are looking for these people as they go through customs is that they're using these infrared cameras to try to spot people with fevers. The problem being, apparently, it's now pretty well known that people will go and stock up on Genetsuzai, so fever-reducing medicine, which you can buy apparently off the shelves anywhere, and people are just taking a whole bunch of fever-reducing medicine when they travel so that they don't get detected. And they're going through. I don't know if that's the case, if that's actually a problem. I think they might have to actually, I mean, it'd be really intrusive. But, you know, they might actually have to start offering proper tests to people as they come through. It's frustrating that people are traveling, particularly when they're knowing that they're sick and that they might have this, especially if they come from these restricted areas. But from tomorrow, it looks like that is getting shut down. So, yes, indeed, hope it doesn't shut down too much. This is an interesting one. So the average Tokyo condo price right now is $544,000 which is a high for 29 years. But compared to the price of, houses in Australia or New Zealand or Canada, it's actually, granted, you're probably getting a larger average size apartment than you get in Tokyo. But honestly, the apartments in Tokyo, particularly the ones that are for sale, typically have multiple bedrooms, living room, kitchen, everything. And yeah, the prices are actually pretty reasonable. I mean, by global standards, really Tokyo, just the lack of inflation here, at least compared to the real estate bubbles that have taken place almost everywhere else. It's kind of funny how Japan avoided it. So like Mr. Kordychip says, you get used to $1 million being the norm now for a new house in Tokyo, where you get better pay than you get in most, well, at least most career jobs here. You got a great standard of living, and the houses are cheaper. So that's pretty good. And another funny thing is that, although this is a photo of waterfront apartments are not popular in Japan, partly because of the water smells, and there is always a tsunami risk, and people generally build away from them. But yes, there are now condos being aimed at foreigners who do want to buy condos by the water, and you can get them cheap. But I must admit, I've lived here too long. I wouldn't get one of those myself. This was kind of funny. This is an emoji explaining the difference between American construction sites, where you see all the barriers and two workers, male and female. I just noticed that there's a different male and female there. And the Japanese construction site, which is, of course, an army of people surrounding it, and all men. I did actually ask the question, is this a bad thing? And I had some people say, well, look, it's clearly inefficient. You're handing out jobs and wasting taxpayer money that's being dedicated for public works. But if you ask me, the thing about public works is it's always been part of the goal of public works is to award money to generate work and jobs and whatnot. And the fact is, you get a lot of these sort of, traffic directing jobs at construction sites and car parks and whatnot in Japan. Hey, Mogberry Pie, good to see you. You get a lot of these jobs, which are supplementary income for pensioners. They do overemploy, but that's the idea. And you know what? It all contributes to the idea that people in Japan, have pretty full employment. And I don't know that it's a bad thing. I don't know that you need to be maximum efficiency on everything per se. Especially, once the companies win the tenders for public bids, it's up to them. If they want to put robots out there, they could do it. But that's going to be a factor in whether they get the tender or not. The intention is to employ people. Now, of course, yes, indeed, another good point there, that the US is a man and a woman there, and in Japan that's not the case. It's probably cultural a little bit as well, but it's not to say that there aren't jobs. I mean, there's overall underemployment, but I did put that out there. Is this actually a bad thing? I mean, it's certainly from a pure economist perspective, maybe it's not. But I thought, actually, it's actually one of the things I think is kind of nice about Japan. So there you go. Interesting stats there from Believe in Yourself, so thank you for that. Yes, indeed, I just mentioned before how Australia topped this list, which I thought was really interesting. I would not have guessed that, but there we go. The top total expenditures based, which is obviously factoring in where most of the tourists are coming from. Japan makes most of its tourism money from China, Taiwan, Korea, Hong Kong, USA, Thailand. Australia's a long way down the list, but when you make it per capita, apparently people are spending, if you just go 100 to 1 conversion ratio, Australians are spending on average $2,500 per person for each visit. UK people spending 2,400, France 2,300, Spain 2,200, China 2,100. So not a lot, not a big difference, but still, interesting that people from those other more developed countries are spending more when they come. It is, I find that kind of interesting. Hotel expenditures. Looks like UK people are spending the most on hotels, although not a big difference between UK, France, and Australia. Food. UK is also spending more. How are they ending up spending less per person? So I'm not sure how that figures out. I think a lot of Australians are spending on skiing and traveling and stuff like that. But there we go. Shopping expenditures. Chinese spend a lot on shopping. Vietnam as well, by the looks, which is surprising, and Hong Kong as well. And US down the list overall. Average stay in Japan. French people on average stay for 17 nights. They stay for nearly more than 2.5 weeks basically. Aussies generally stay for 2 weeks, as do Brits. I would guess Americans, who only generally get like a week of vacation total per year, including for when they're sick, can only probably spend a few days. But yes, that is a cool thing. So I thought those were interesting stats. In Yokohama, they are building a new Gundam statue that's apparently going to move. I'm expecting jetpacks flying and fighting. Not sure if that's exactly how it's going to work, but yes, there is going to be a new life-size Gundam statue, and it's going to be pretty cool. So I am looking forward to seeing that myself. Yes, bated breath. It is interesting that the government in Japan has actually seriously proposed trying to create real Gundam robots. Yeah, seems a bit like a boondoggle, but hell, why not? It's pretty cool. Those are all the topics I have ready. I've gotten through it a little bit quickly, partly because I need to get to sleep, but I need to get up and look after my son tomorrow. I can take any topics that you've got, but one thing I will say again before I finish is go subscribe to Non-Native Creative, Arisha in Tokyo's channel that she's created, which is featuring podcasts and interviews with creators, including myself. The video with me should be coming out in the next couple of days, so I'll be sharing that on Twitter. Just other random stuff on Netflix. I've been enjoying watching The Good Place lately. I've just finished season 2. No spoilers, please, in the comments, but recommend that. That was actually pretty fun. There's actually not a lot else going on at the moment. So yes, if you've got any more topics, speak now, forever hold your peace. And have a good week, everybody. I'll be back, of course, next week. I guess you'll see me on Non-Native Creative during the week if you look out for that. But otherwise, that's pretty much it. I would normally have made some music, but pretty efficient tonight. Obviously, everybody, regardless of what's going on, take care of yourself. Not just the coronavirus, but it's flu season in the Northern Hemisphere. Southern Hemisphere, there's still fire and smoke and whatnot. So take care. See you all again next week with more news and cool latest stuff from Japan. Thank you everybody for joining. Great to see everybody here. Remember to like if you liked, and see you next week. Same time, same place. Well, actually, a little bit early, 10:40 next week. So yes, boom, peace.